began his career in education as a teacher and coach, eventually becoming a high school principal and school district community resource director. Since then, he's had first-hand experience in owning and operating a successful business. Andy was the lead instructional designer for Franklin Covey's acclaimed The Four Disciplines of Execution. He has worked as a facilitator and senior consultant for various clients in the software, insurance, hospitality, banking, construction, healthcare, chemical, mortgage, technology, telecom, energy, and pharmaceutical industries, among others, as well as working with branches of the U.S. Armed Forces and National Guard. Andy brings a wealth of experience working with organizations that are serious about achieving great results, like we are here in Cal. Would everyone please join me in welcoming Andy Cindrich.
Thank you very much. As I'm being introduced, I'm reminded of an experience. I was speaking to about 300 stockbrokers in this large brokerage firm, and I was sitting in the back of the room, and one of the women who was going to be introducing me was reading over my bio, and in my bio at the time it talked about me being a master gardener and a salsa enthusiast. And so the lady leans over to me and she whispers and she says, "So tell me about this salsa dancing thing." And I just, my whole consulting career. How you guys doing? That was awesome. So my whole consulting career just flashes before my eyes, and I'm thinking, how many thousands of people have I talked to that thought that the salsa that I was enthusiastic about was dancing? So it's all about, hot peppers and tomatoes and fresh stuff out of the garden. That's the kind of salsa I'm enthusiastic about. Well, I'm really glad to have so many of you here to listen to something I'm really passionate about. And the reason I'm passionate about the stuff that I'm going to talk to you today about is that this stuff works. And everything I'm going to talk about is also principle-based. And so if it's a principle at school, it's a principle at work, it's a principle in life. It's a principle in your communities where you live. It's a principle in the sports teams you play in or that you like to watch. This stuff has relevance in every aspect of life. And so that's why we're talking about how to win at work, at school, and in life. It's because this has relevance everywhere. Now, before we get started, I've got to do a quick assessment. Everybody should have, this is a complex tool that I've developed to kind of get a sense of where my audience is in terms of their ability to win. So what I'm going to ask you to do is flip that page over, if you would. Does everybody have one? Turn the page over, and let me explain what the assignment is. Okay, here's the assignment. I'm going to give you a minute, and in that minute, you're going to have to touch with your index finger every one of the numbers on that page in order from the number 1 to 54. Okay, all the numbers are there. Now, some of you are cheating already. Look at me. Because they should be flipped over, right? Everybody's got the blank side up, right? Okay, good. So you're going to touch with your index finger, right? Not with a pencil, your index finger, the numbers 1 through 54 in order. Have to touch all of them. Can't rub your hand over it and say you're done, right? So I'm giving you a minute to do that. Now let me tell you, I do this all the time all over the world, and regularly people will get all the way done and yell bingo and keep going. So they'll get into the 60s or 70s, okay? But you have only a minute to do it. What I'd like you to do now is forecast how many numbers do you think you're going to be able to touch in a minute, and write that number down on the back of your page. Write that number down on the back of your page. How many are you going to be able to do? There are 54. You got 60 seconds. You got to touch as many as you can. Nope. Everybody got your forecast written down? Check your neighbors and make sure they've written their forecast now, because a lot of guys like to forecast after their performance, and that doesn't work. Yes? What's that? No, one finger, one number at a time, in order, starting at what number? And ending when? Go as far as you can up to 54. If you get to 54, what do? Yell bingo and keep going, okay? Because people get past 54 all the time. Everybody has their number written. Your neighbors have their number written. On your marks. Get set. Go. Let's go. Hurry, hurry. This is not rocket science, people. This is easy. It's the first quarter's over. We got 3 quarters left. Let's go. You got to deliver. You got to hit your number. Let's go. Let's go. Work it. Work it. Half the time is gone. Half the time is gone. Let's go. Come on, come on, come on. This is not hard. It's very easy. All the numbers are there. Trust me. I know you don't think 16's there, but it's there, Stephen. I swear. It's there, bro. You got 15 seconds left. Who's yelling bingo? Time. Turn your page over. Turn your page over. Write down your actual performance. Write down your actual performance. Okay. How many of you achieved your goal? Okay, so how many did you guys get? How many? 15. Your goal was? That's right. Aim low and you can hit low, right? But you won, right? That's success, right? She was in with a parameter. She knew where she's at. Okay? How many of you missed your goal wildly? By 10. Okay? How many of you were able to do over 30? You got to 30. Got 3, 4 of you. Okay? 5 of you. So what would you like to do? And what's the problem? I mean, this is not hard, right? They're numbers. They're all there on the page. You got 60 full seconds to do this. Why can't you hit your forecast? And why can so many of you not do more than like 30? Help me understand. What's the problem? Yeah?
Because it's really hard when you're looking for a specific number to find that one. But if you go with the big picture, then it's easier to see.
Okay. So hard to find. With all that stuff going on, you got to keep the big picture instead of just, okay, what else makes it hard? What do you think?
Because there's not a recognized pattern immediately.
Not a recognized pattern immediately. What else?
I did this once with like a group of elementary kids.
Yeah.
And they beat all of us. So maybe it's something with like, I don't want to say people that got above 30, but it's simple-minded.
Okay. All right. All right. Maybe you're making it too complex.
I was getting distracted and like noticing what the future numbers were going to be and where they're at rather than the ones I had to do right away.
Okay, a little bit of distraction. How many of you felt like I was a distraction? Okay, that's good. Thank you. So here's the thing. How could you get better at this? If I let you practice, would that help you get better? Okay? You'd like to think that, wouldn't you? The reality is you won't get better. In fact, some of you will get worse, and it'll be such a battering on your self-esteem, I'm not even going to give you the opportunity. That's what I've found. I've done this hundreds of times. So I haven't found that that works. The practice isn't enough. Okay? Here's what you need to be able to get better at this. You need a framework. You need some sort of pattern to help you understand how to get it done. Okay? And here's the pattern. If you notice, number 1 is up in the top left-hand corner. Number 2 is in the top middle. 3 is right there. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Where's 10? Back up there again. Okay? Let's see if you can do better. On your marks. Get set. Go. Let's go. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Time is short. This is not rocket science, people. This is easy. It's just numbers. They're all there. 15 seconds gone. You got 45 seconds to deliver. Let's go. Let's go, Sandra. No excuses. Half your time's gone. 30 seconds left. If you get bingo, keep going and see how far you can get. You might be able to set the record. You got 10 seconds left. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Time. Now, how many of you beat your performance? All of you. How many hit your goal, your original goal? Almost all of you. How many of you got over 30? Almost all of you. How many of you got over 50? Look at how much the performance improves. All you need is a pattern. All you need is a framework of understanding to get this simple task done. Same thing goes with winning. You got to have a framework to make it so that you can get it done. So let's talk about it. Winning is really all about getting results. And there are two things that help you to get results as a winner. First thing is you got to have a plan, right? You got to have some sort of a strategy. You have an approach to get from where you are to where you want to be, to get the results that you have or that you want to have. The next thing you have to have is you got to have the ability to execute that strategy or that plan. And that all boils down to a lot of hard work, right? But those are the things, really an equation. The strategy that you have times your ability to execute it is going to determine what kind of results you get. Now, what would be better, to have a brilliant strategy and not be able to execute it very well, or to have a B-level, C-level strategy and execute it flawlessly? Where do you think you get the best results? Probably executing a poor strategy get you better results than having a flawless strategy that you can't execute. Now, where do people spend most of their time? How many of you guys you know how to set a goal? You've set goals before, right? You know how to do that? How many of you have ever been trained to execute? A couple of you. That's good. Okay, so that's unusual, actually. I haven't found very many audiences that would have that percentage of people. You must be doing something right, Bruce. So most of us have not been trained to execute our strategies or our plans. We're really good at setting plans and setting goals, but it's really hard for us to execute them. And so we usually put a lot of emphasis on the goal-setting part, not on the execution part, despite the fact that the execution part is the hardest thing. Now, why would that be? Why is it that we spend less time on the hardest thing, more time on the easiest thing? Because it's easier, because we're drawn to the easy. Okay, could be. I think, go ahead.
So few people actually know how, so they therefore can't teach people.
Okay, so maybe there's not a lot of people that know how, so we don't have a learning environment. We don't know who to go to find out how to do it. It's possible. I think a lot of it is we just assume execution happens. We just assume we're running a business. Let's say, at some future time, you guys are going to be running a business, some organization, some team. You're leaders, right? Some of you might just be leading a family. Some of you might just be leading a team. Some of you might play a role in your church. Somehow you're going to be leading, and you're going to make an assumption that because you have a plan, that it's going to automatically get done. And I think that's what happens. We just assume that the execution of the plan is going to happen because we have a plan. And that's the mistake that we make. Okay? It doesn't happen by osmosis. We got to actually do it. So let's talk about what is execution. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about the word execution? Tell me it's not this. All right? We're going to talk about something a little bit different. Here's definitions of execution. You got the dictionary definition. It's nice, right? It's good. Here's the definition of execution from the point of view of Ram Charan, who's a guru of execution, wrote the book Execution, the Disciplines of Getting Things Done. I think the very best definition of execution comes from Larry the Cable Guy. What's that? Get her done. Right? I think that's the best definition of execution. And so for our purposes, that's going to be the definition that we're going to use. How do you get her done? Whatever it is that we're trying to work on. So let's talk about why people don't win, why they don't get her done consistently. Because sometimes we get it done a little bit, but we're not consistent. What we want to do, do you want to win periodically, or do you want to win every time? Okay, how many in this room are winners? How do you know? Interesting. We got to talk some more about that. Here's why people don't win consistently. First thing is, they don't have the framework. Okay, we just talked about and demonstrated the value of a framework. Next, they haven't clarified the big picture. They really don't know where they're headed. They haven't defined for them what winning looks like. At the individual level, at the team level, at the organizational level, they don't know what winning looks like. I think a lot of people don't win because they're afraid. I think they're just flat afraid. They're afraid to get on a horse and ride it. I think a lot of people don't win because they don't know what to focus on. They don't know what the most important priority is at this point in their life right now. And so when they're unfocused, they don't deploy enough resources at any given time to achieve the thing that matters the most. I think a lot of people don't win because they don't know how to translate the goal into what they do every day when they show up to school, when they show up to work, when they show up to life. They don't know what to do. And so it's really hard for them to win. I think a lot of people just don't stay focused. There's so much going on that they get drug off of their most important objectives to do other things that don't matter that much. They fail to stay at it long enough to actually produce a win. Any of you are familiar with teams that play really good in the first 3 quarters of a game and then fall apart at the end? Right? Jazz tend to do that a lot, right? Okay, just trying to bring up some, and I think another one is, this might be a little bit weird, but we'll talk a little bit more about it. I think one of the problems is we don't put mechanisms in place to support us in doing the really hard things we need to do to win. Because is winning easy? Not very often, unless you're winning in an environment where there's no competition, where there's no pressure. But I think winning's hard, and we need to put for ourselves some mechanisms in place that help us to do the things that are necessary to win in a really hard environment when we're really, really busy just managing the day-to-day. And that's one of the things that winners do really, really well. So let's talk about the disciplines of winning. I think there are really 2 kind of broad categories or aspects of winning and 3 disciplines, things that you have to do to win. You have to define winning. You also have to develop a game plan. You have to figure out how are we going to win. And those are the things that have to do with the preparation planning piece that most of us are pretty good at. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I'm going to just give you a couple of nuggets about those 2 pieces. I think the real value is how do you define the hard work piece? How do you play to win? Once we've defined what winning is, what game we're trying to win, what our objective is, and once we've figured out how to get that done, how do we actually play to win? That's where we're going to spend most of our time. But let's jump into the planning and preparation piece. To start out with, there's an upside to not planning. Sir Harvey Jones said, the nicest thing about not planning is that failure comes as a complete surprise rather than being preceded by a period of worry and depression. So if you don't want to plan, there's an upside. You got that going for you. Let's talk about defining winning, the first piece of planning and preparation. There's 3 parts to this. First of all, you got to do what I call detect your mission. You got to understand what's your purpose, what's your reason for being around as a team, as an organization, as a human being. Then you got to figure out what's your vision. What does that purpose look like when I'm doing it really, really well? And then you got to have some values that undergird everything that you do, that provide a foundation for the way that you work. Okay, those are the 3 components of defining winning. Now, for mission statements, I think it's really important to recognize that no organization has a right to exist. You earn the right to exist by meeting the needs of your key stakeholders. Okay? Now, does that have relevance in life? Okay? Where are the Colts playing football now? Where did they start playing football? Okay, why did they move? It's interesting. Okay, think about some of the companies that were originally part of the Dow 30. The original Dow 30. How many of them are in existence today? 2, I think. Why? The rest of the organizations ceased to exist. They went away because they don't meet the needs of their stakeholders. Okay? What happens when a family fails to meet the needs of its key stakeholders? Kids run away from home, divorce, right? So this is a principle. So now, human beings, you have a right to exist whether you meet needs or not, but you certainly don't feel that good about yourself if you don't have a clear picture of where you're headed and what you're supposed to be doing.
Sorry to ask, but what if you go back to the other slide?
No, we'd be here all day. Sorry, bro. Write as fast as you can. Did you take the speed writing class yet?
Speed reading.
Okay, this is going to be videoed, right? And so I think there might be an opportunity to check it out later, right? Because if we did that, we'd be here till like 7, and I'd get yanked in like 25 minutes. So, all right. One of the things that you want to think about when you're figuring out what your mission is, the reason for existence, is really about defining the job that you're supposed to do and defining what value you're going to add. So is that important for a team in an organization? If you're supervising a team, if you're managing a team of individuals at some point, is it important for you to understand what the job to be done is? Yeah, pretty important. If you're running a business, you start your own company or you're CEO of some organization, you pretty much need to understand what the value is. What are you adding in the marketplace? It's pretty important. How many of you have ever thought about what's the value you need to add as a human being? You ever really thought about what's the value I have to add in this world, in the places where I live, What value do I need to, what about my apartment? Do I need to add some value there? What value do I need to add in my church? What value do I need to add on my sports team, my intramural team? What value do I need to add in the walls of my own home? What value do I need to add in this program? We need to think about those kinds of stuff, and that's really what your mission is. And it's something that you detect. E.M. Gray said that winners have the habit of doing the things that losers don't like to do. They don't like doing them either necessarily, but their disliking is subordinate to the strength of their purpose. This is why your mission or your purpose statement matters so much, because when you have a clear understanding of why you exist as a team, as an organization, as a human being, it allows you to have the strength to do some of the things that winners have to do to win, the very same things that people who are losing do not want to do. And if you don't have a clear, compelling purpose or a mission statement, it's pretty hard to make those kind of sacrifices and do what's necessary to win. How about this for a mission statement? This is from Dilbert. Our mission is to enthusiastically facilitate virtual resources such that we may continue to dramatically maintain cutting-edge deliverables while promoting personal employee growth. You ever seen a mission statement like that? About 3/4 of the mission statements for organizations around the world look a lot like that. You can generate them right in the Dilbert mission statement generator. And all the words are, it's all the right words for a mission statement, but how much meaning is there? Could somebody direct their efforts by looking at that mission statement? A mission statement has to be more than something that an organization puts on a wall behind the receptionist's desk. It's got to be something that's more than just a document in a PowerPoint slide or in a Word document. It's got to be something that has meaning and it makes sense. Okay? This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Is that a clear mission statement? That's the real mission statement for the saints this year. Wasn't their mission statement last year, the year before, the year before. That's their mission statement this year. Is it making a difference for them, those of you that follow pro football? Yeah. They're leading in so many key metrics, it's unbelievable the success that they're having, the records that they're setting this year as they go throughout the season. And I think part of it is because they've got a really simple, very clear, understandable, impactful mission. Finish strong. Probably a pretty good mission for a lot of us. Now, next piece is, you've got to translate the mission into a vision. Here's Dilbert's creator, Scott Adams' description of what a vision statement is. It's a long, awkward sentence that demonstrates management's inability to think clearly. Got the same problem with vision statements that we have in mission statements. You get all the right words in them, but they don't really matter. They don't impact our behavior. And so what we want to do is have a mission statement that's tied to the vision statement. The mission tells why we exist. The vision tells what that existence looks like when we're doing it really, really well. Okay? That's the difference. They're very, very similar. A vision statement is measurable, though. Biggest mistake that organizations and teams make is they have all the right words in their little vision statement. They put it on people's business cards. They write it on the wall. They put it in PowerPoint presentations. But when they get 5 or 10 years down the road, there's no way to measurably tell that they've achieved it or not. So we got to have a measure in there that is verifiable, some way to tell that we actually have arrived at the place we said we wanted to get to. Okay? So, good vision statements. They're short, really simple. They're focused. They don't have a bunch of different things written into them. Very, very clear. They have to be measurable, and they've got to have a very compelling statement of where we want to go. The vision statement should help get people off their butts. B-U-T-S and B-U-T-T-S. Okay? That's what compelling is all about. It makes people quit saying, but, all the reasons why we can't do something, and makes us get off the couch and go get after it and do something that really matters. Make a contribution that's really significant down the road. That's what a vision statement's supposed to be. What do you think the vision statement is for the saints? If they do their mission really, really well, if they finish strong in every single football game they play, and they're doing it really, really well all season long, what's that going to lead to? It's not hard, man. That's their vision. Is that pretty clear? Is that simple? Is it succinct? Is it short? Is it compelling? Would it get people off their butts? Has it gotten them off their butts? Do they have a million reasons why they shouldn't be winning? They got tons of reasons, right? all the way from Katrina and you name it, having to play in different stadiums. I mean, they got a million problems. But they're off their butts, and they're doing what they need to do because they got a really compelling vision. They believe that they can get it done. That's how simple we like to have them, okay? Really clear. All right, let's talk about the second part. So planning and preparation, remember there's two parts. We just talked about the first part. You got to define winning. Next thing we have to do is we have to develop the game plan. There's three parts to this. We got to figure out the strategy. Next thing we got to do is we got to clarify in that strategy what we're going to focus on. And the next thing we got to do is we got to design our plays. We got to figure out what plays do we have to run to be able to actually win the Super Bowl, to actually win game after game after game while we're finishing strong. So it's developing the game plan. Choose your strategy, clarify your focus, and you got to design the plays. So let's talk about developing your game plan. Love this quote from the architect Burnham. He said, "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood. Make big plans. Aim high in hope and work." Now, there's something about missions and visions where I asked you guys, or kind of mentioned this idea, they got to be aspirational. They have to be inspiring. They have to get people off their butts. We ought to have the same thing when we're making our plans. Don't do little things. Little things don't get you out of bed in the morning. Go after big things, exciting stuff, stuff that gets you noticed, stuff that's compelling for you, stuff you're interested in. Go after the contributions and the gap closure that really makes a difference to you and to the people that you care about. Okay? One of the things you've got to do as you're doing this planning is you got to choose your strategy. And strategy is really about the unique to you and to your team and to your organization, the unique things that you have to do to differentiate yourself, to create value. Remember, the mission is you got to create value. You got to figure out what's the value you're supposed to add. There's some needs that you have to meet. And if you fail to meet those needs, you're going to go out of business, right? So this is part of where you're thinking, you got to pick a path. You got to pick a horse and ride it. You got to choose your strategy. It's got to be unique to you. Because if your product or your service is the same as what everybody else is doing, why are they going to buy from you? The essence of strategy is choice. How will you add value that other people will pay for? Now, does that have relevance in a business that's doing a product or service, right? They got to differentiate themselves, got to add value in a unique way. They have to have a value proposition that other people will pay for. Now, what about a team in an organization? Does a marketing department have to create value in a unique way? Yeah, they do stuff different than sales. They do stuff different than R&D. They have to have some way to add value. And what happens to a training department or a marketing department that fails to deliver results, that fails to win? Yeah, and then what happens? You start losing your job, right? Because you fail to add value, and what happens? You cease to exist. Okay, so those departments go away. Their leaders go away, right? So would this have relevance in life? As an individual, do you need to choose a strategy for the way that you're going to add value? Yeah, all of you guys are part of classrooms, right? Are you a leader in your classroom? Did somebody vote you to be a leader? Do they have to? Yeah, leadership's a choice, not a position. It's not a name on a card on a door. Okay, it's a choice. And you can go to a class, any class you're in, you can choose to be a leader, and you can choose to have a strategy for having an impact in that class. So this has relevance in every aspect of life. Another thought is we got to clarify our focus. So we got to figure out the strategy, but the strategy's got to be focused. We got to figure out what are we going to do to win. What is the clear path? This is a quote from DNA Leadership that I think is pretty important. Firmly established goals are important because they create a magnetic-like attraction. They attract us. And why does a goal need to attract us? Why do we need to be attracted? Okay, because motivation. And if we're not attracted to the goal, if we're not attracted to do something that takes our performance to the next level, what are we attracted to? Okay, laying in bed, that's a good one. Playing video games, that's a problem for some people. Text messaging, mindless just activities, just getting by. How many people just get by?
It's natural for the path of least resistance.
That's it. Natural to go on the path of least resistance. So that path, there's a magnetic pull to go down the path of least resistance, isn't there? It's a natural magnetic pull. It's not bad. That's a characteristic of human beings. We want to do as little as we can to get what we want, and we're pretty good at it. But that's just managing the day-to-day. If we really want to really accomplish cool things, really make a difference in the world, then we got to have goals and put some other attraction that will capture some of our time and our attention and our resources to those things, or we're just going to be sucked down the path of least resistance. And what do you get when you go down the path of least resistance? You might get something. You might get mediocrity. How many people are looking for mediocre managers? How many people are looking to buy mediocre products and services? How many of you want to be a mediocre husband, father, brother, sister, wife, mother, neighbor, church member? I don't think any of us are striving for mediocrity. So if we want to be great at something, we've got to put these attractants out that help move us in the right direction. And goals are one of the things that do that. This idea of focus is not just me talking about focus. This is a lot of business thinkers are realizing how important it is to focus. I actually had, a couple years ago, a business leader told me, Cindrich, you just don't get it. I'm running a complex, multi-million-dollar international business here, and you tell me I can only have a couple of goals for my business? You just don't get it. I mean, I got 16 goals I'm reporting to the board on every single quarter. So focus, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And what he didn't realize is he was going to the board every quarter and he was reporting mediocrity on all 16 of his goals. I finally said, hey, Bob, when are you going to get interested in reporting that you're knocking it out of the park on a couple of things? Ooh, that sounded a little bit more compelling than going to the board and saying, yeah, I'm not doing anything well. So the idea gets reinforced by Ram Charan in his book Execution, and he says leaders who execute focus on a very few clear priorities. They're so crystal clear that everybody gets it. From the mailroom clerk to the CEO, we all get it. That's how clear they need to be. You look at a book called What Really Works. They looked at 200 management practices to figure out what consistently helped the organizations that are winning win. And what they found is that the winners pursued very clear and narrowly focused growth strategies. They're not all over the place. They talked about losers that couldn't figure out what they were. You got like a Kmart, right? Kmart declares bankruptcy. Why did they declare bankruptcy? Because they weren't sure who they were. They were Kmart, then they were trying to be Walmart, then they were trying to be Target. They couldn't do any of that well, so they did none of it well. They ended up going bankrupt. And they're trying to pull out of it now. But a lot of companies and organizations that are unsuccessful, they struggle because their strategy is not focused. You can't have a strategy to do everything, right? Love this one, Yu Tang. He's a Chinese philosopher. He takes another angle at it, the other idea of focus. Besides the noble art of getting things done, there's the noble art of leaving things undone. The wisdom in life consists in the elimination of those things that are non-essential. How good are we in the day-to-day about making the decisions to not do things that don't add value? So many of us waste so much time doing stuff that just flat doesn't matter. And when we do that, because we have limited resources, we have limited time, we spread that time and limited resources across things that don't really matter. And what we find is that we leave the things that really do count undone, right? So here's another idea. You guys are familiar with a company called Apple, right? How many of you have one of their products on your person right now? Yeah, interesting. I've got 2 of them in my laptop or my briefcase. I mean, this is really interesting. This is a company that really has it figured out. They did an interview with Fortune a couple years ago, and this is their CEO, Tim Cook, talking. He said, at Apple, there's no such thing as hedging your bets. One traditional management philosophy that's taught in many business schools is diversification. You go to business school, they actually teach you a philosophy that can lead to your demise. They said, well, that's not us. Apple's philosophy goes like this. Too many companies spread themselves thin, making a profusion of products to diffuse risk, so they get mired in the mediocre. And Apple's approach is to put every resource it has behind just a few products and make them exceedingly well. How many times does Apple blow it when they release a product? Man, just not that often. And if they blow it, it's only because they were early, right? I mean, they got it nailed, right? How many of you are going to buy an iPad? Be honest. Okay. That's.
They don't know. I think you're saying iPod, but they don't know what the new pad.
Oh, do you guys know about? How many of you heard about the iPad? They know. Okay. Bruce. Are you kidding? They don't know. They watched it live, right? All right, here's Jobs goes on. He says, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on, but that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to 100 other good ideas. Okay, that's the problem. And you have to choose really, really carefully, he's saying. There are so many good things that we can do. All of us can do lots and lots of good things. And the reality is, all those good things are the enemy of great. Because if you try to do every good thing that's possible, you'll do none of those things well enough to have an impact. It's like trying to boil the ocean. You can't boil the ocean. You got only 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to get stuff done. And if you spread that time and your money and your mind share across 50 good things, none of those single good things will get enough to actually matter. You'll warm the ocean, but you can't do anything with a warm ocean, right? If you take it pot by pot and you put all your energy behind boiling one pot of water, can you do something with that? Yeah, because steam will move stuff, right? And that's the key. You got to focus. Now, does it matter? Does it work for Apple? Yeah, it works. And it doesn't work because they have cool products. It works because they're working in the marketplace. People who've invested in them are doing very, very well. People that work there love working there, right? So in 2008, they were #1 among Fortune 500 companies for total return to shareholders for the previous 5 years and for the 10 years prior. They were Fortune's most admired company in 2008 and again this year. And they were Fast Company's second most innovative company in 2008, fourth most innovative in 2009. They're the 28th most profitable Fortune 500 company in 2009. Their approach and their value of focus works, not just on a product basis, but it works for them financially. It works for them in terms of creating an environment that people want to be a part of, despite the fact that Steve Jobs tends to be a maniacal, crazy man in terms of leadership. All right. Next thing we have to do in clarifying our focus is, once we've kind of chosen our path and we've limited the number of goals that we're going to go after, you have to write the goal right. And that's a big problem for people. Good goal statement has to clearly define the performance gap, and it has to have a deadline for accomplishing the goal. What happens if you don't put a deadline on your goals? How come they don't get done? Okay? It doesn't the deadline, yeah, stuff comes up, right? Stuff keeps us from getting the most important goals done. Because we have, here's the thing. If you have a confrontation between stuff that's urgent and stuff that's important, what works? What wins? Why does the urgent win? Because it can win. But why do we go after urgent stuff instead of stuff that matters? Okay, tied to our emotions, tied to our desire to get instant gratification, right? When does the urgent stuff need to get done? Yeah, now or yesterday, right? It's late. Isn't that how it is? So when you're confronted with doing something that really, really matters, that's going to take you 3 months to do, or doing something that's overdue that really didn't matter, but it's pressing on you, it's like flying in your face like this, what do? You got to get rid of this. And how does it feel? Doesn't it feel good to check stuff off of a list even if it really doesn't matter? I mean, how many of you actually at the end of a day write down all the stuff that you did just so you can check it off and get that endorphin rush? Have you done? Raise your hand if you've done it. You guys know it. And the ones that haven't, you're lying. It feels so good. You literally get an endorphin rush when you check that stuff off. And so it feels good. Doesn't it feel good to fight fires if you're a firefighter? Do you get recognized if you rush into a burning building and, save people? How many firefighters get written up in the paper and get commendations for preventing fires? See the problem? Okay, so that's the thing we're dealing with in goal statements. All right, next thing we have to do as part of this is we've got to design the plays. We've got to figure out, how do we get from where we are to where we want to be? How do we close that performance gap in that timeline that we've allotted? And what we have to do is we have to ask us some questions. First thing we have to say is, right, who is it that's really, really good at this, and what do they do that I'm not doing? And then we need to ask, what have we not tried doing that could make all the difference if we did it? And once we've kind of brainstormed all those things, next thing we got to do is we got to figure out, what would we bet would have the greatest impact? What would the thing be that maybe is going to make the biggest difference? And we want to apply the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule is based on what's called the Pareto Principle. Pareto Principle tells us that we get about 80% of the value from about 20% of our efforts. It tells us that about 80% of the land in the world is owned by 20% of the people, right? It tells us that if you're a high school principal, which I used to be, you have 80% of your problems come from 20% of your parents. You think it's the kids. It's not. It's the parents. Kids are awesome. Next thing you got to do is you got to write those behaviors down as lead measures. Okay? Predictive measures. Now let's take you through an example of this. Is that a good goal statement? What's wrong with that? I don't have a deadline. What else? It's not specific, right? Because what does get in shape mean? Because pear is a shape, right? Isn't it? Pear is a shape? It is. Round's a really nice shape. Is that the shape people want to get into typically? Right? And we might not even be talking about physical shape. We might be talking about financial shape, right? That's another shape. So that's not really good. How do you define get in shape if we decided we're going to go down the path of talking about getting in physical shape? How do you define it?
You could include a picture of what you want to look like.
Okay, could be visual, could be picture, so it'd be about measurement, right? Could be waist size, could be dress size, could be, what else?
Endurance.
Could be endurance or speed. So, can I run a marathon? Can I run a mile in a certain, speed? Something like that. Could be cholesterol level. Could be body fat percentage, right? Could be BMI. Lots of different ways to measure get in shape, right? What if we said that getting in shape was that we wanted to lose 10 pounds before, we hit the beach in June? That be a decent goal? Is it clear? Measurable? Deadline? Good goal statement. Okay, now let's think about people who are good at losing weight. What do they do consistently well that's predictable? Now, wouldn't you have to choose a strategy, right? How are you going to get from where you are and want to 10 pounds less? What are the options?
Eat less exercise with your basics.
Okay, I was thinking liposuction first, right? Is that a strategy you could choose? It's an option. Some people might say, I'm not going to go down that path. So barring that, what else do you have to do? Exercise and what else? Eat diet. I mean, it's probably those two things. Now, are those clear? No. Because, see, some people think the predictive measure for weight loss and getting in shape is that they've got a Gold's Gym Pass on their keychain. Is that predictive of success? No. Some people say, well, I got to go to the gym 3 times a week. Is going to the gym predictive of success or weight loss? No, because I see a lot of people and the only muscle they're working is their jaw muscle, right? So you need to be very specific about what are you going to do when you go to the gym, how many calories, what's your heart rate going to get to, what activities are you going to do, are you going to lift weights, are you going to do just cardio, what is it you're going to do? And then you might have to be very specific about diet. Now some people will choose not to diet. I'm going to eat just the same. Well, if you choose that strategy, then what do you have to do? You've got to burn more calories. If you say I'm not going to the gym, what do you have to do? You got to eat less. Or you could do a combination. You see the strategy? You got to think about what's my approach, and then you got to be very specific about how many calories will you take in. Now, how many of you know how much you weigh right now within 5 pounds? Okay, pretty easy, right? It's easy to know what the outcome measure is. That's really easy. How many of you know how many calories you've taken in today? Oh, a couple of you. How many of you know how many you've burned today? It's even less. It's harder, isn't it? That is the secret sauce of getting things done, is to know what's predictive of success and to be so clearly focused on doing those things that you know exactly whether or not you've done it. Because what you don't want to do is get to June 1st and you're at the beach and find out you don't look good in your swimsuit, right? That's the problem. So we want to know beforehand. And if I know that I haven't been to the gym and done the workout that I said I had to do, and if I've eaten twice the allotted calories for 4 days in a row, is that predictive of something? Yeah, that's predictive of bad things at the beach. So you got to know that, all right? So now let's get down to where the rubber meets the road. All the other stuff is the planning and preparation stuff. The stuff I think we're probably pretty good at. Hopefully you got a couple of other things to think about. Next piece is it boils down to some hard work. We got to play to win. And there's some components of playing to win. First thing, we got to keep score. Second thing, we got to huddle, and we got to do it regularly. Next thing we need to do is we need to complete our assignments. Once you leave the huddle, you've left with an assignment, you got to go get that assignment done, and then you have to persist no matter what happens. No matter what the competition does, no matter what kind of weather there is, no matter what happens, you have to stay after it if you want to be able to get her done. Because it's not always going to be nice, smooth sailing to get from where you are to where you want to be. So I love this quote from Mark Twain. The dictionary is the only place where success comes before work. If we want to be successful, we're going to have to work at it. And if you look at the people who are successful, they tend to have a pretty good work ethic. Peter Drucker said, sooner or later, all plans degenerate into work. It all boils down to work. I mean, this is where we're headed. We got to know that all the planning, all the preparation, all the visioning, the great mission statement, the goal setting, it's just a bunch of ideas, a bunch of brainstorming, a bunch of writing, but our lives haven't changed yet. This is the part where life gets difficult. This is the part where we need some help to get the hard things done so that we can actually get from where we are to where we want to be. So we can actually make the contribution in the world to our team, to our organizations, to our families, to our friends and peers that we know that we should make. So, play to win. Winning isn't the only thing, or it isn't everything, it's the only thing. Love that quote. It's often wrongly attributed. It's actually Red Sanders that said that. How about this from Lance Armstrong? You've got to think about if playing to win, who are we playing against? And Armstrong has an interesting approach to it. He says there's a point in every race when a rider encounters his real opponent and understands that it's himself. Is that accurate for us? How does that work? You're in a bike race. How is the opponent you? Somebody pulls out ahead of you. Isn't he your opponent?
But do I have the desire to go chase him down?
Do I want to go through that pain right now to do it? And my ability to even make that decision is based on what? Did I go through the pain last week and last month and last year to prepare me for this moment where somebody's kicking my rear end and I got to dig down deep and either catch up and pass them or take second place? Right? How many of us want to take second place? No. That's like, it's like my son. I got a 9-year-old son, Jackson, and I travel a lot, and he called me on the phone one time, and I asked him, I said, Jackson, how'd your soccer game go? And he says, oh, Dad, we kissed our sisters. I said, what's that mean? He says, we tied, and it's just like kissing your sister. It's not losing, it's not winning, it's not that good, right? He's 9 years old, just a little guy. That's his perception of it, okay? Here's another perspective on who the competition is when we're trying to win, okay? One is ourselves, okay? Here's one from Swindle. It's us versus urgency. We already talked a little bit about this. He said, don't let the urgent take place of what's important in your life. Oh, the urgent will really fight, claw, and scream for attention. It will plead for our time and make us think that we've done the right thing by calming its nerves. But the tragedy of all this is that while you and I are putting out the fires of the urgent, never goes away, happens every single day, the important was again left in a holding pattern. And interestingly, the important is neither noisy nor demanding. Is the urgent demanding? Yes. Oh yeah, it's demanding. It's right in our face. Unlike the urgent, it patiently and quietly waits for us to realize its significance. Another quote about us versus urgency. Urgency engulfs us, yet the most urgent task is not always the most important. The tyranny of the urgent lies in the distortion of priorities. One of the measures of effectiveness is the ability to distinguish the important from the urgent, to refuse to be tyrannized by the urgent. And many of us are tyrannized by the urgent. And a lot of it's our own creating, because we haven't planned, we haven't prepared, we're flying by the seat of our pants. How many of us cram for exams? Right? Doesn't that, what happens? You got a deadline, right? You've been put, was there any question when our exams are coming? We know, all along we know where they're coming. How come we don't work on them 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time? Because they're not urgent right then, right? Do they matter? Yeah, they matter, but we tend to cram. Because as soon as it gets urgent, then we're going to pay attention to it. All right, here's another one. This is from The War of Art. Not The Art of War, but The War of Art. Great book if you haven't read it. Short little paperback that's just amazing and so dang funny. Stephen Pressfield said, there's a secret that real writers know that wannabe writers don't. And the secret is this: it's not the writing part that's hard. What's hard is sitting down to write. what keeps us from sitting down is resistance. And this guy's a writer, and he's basically writing a book to teach people how to write, how to be successful professional writers. But when I read it, I'm not a writer, but it was one of the most powerful influences in helping me understand what it is that keeps me and others from getting her done. Resistance is it. And he actually defines resistance as if it has the characteristics of people. Very funny. You'll definitely relate to it. If you have a chance to read that, I highly recommend it. So it's us versus ourselves if we're trying to win. It's us versus the urgent if we're trying to win. And it's us versus resistance if we're trying to win. And resistance has a lot of faces. So to get past that, we got to put some mechanisms in place to help us to be able to win. Some tools, if you will, that help us to be able to get past the enemy or get past the competition to win. One of the things that got to have a compelling mission and vision. Compelling, something that gets us going, gets us out of the bed in the morning to get after it. It's got to be something that we do that involves people in the process. Now, if you're just doing your own mission and vision, your own personal goals will, involve your own multiple personalities or whatever. But for the most part, that's your own little thing. But as soon as you lead a team, you don't do this work to people. You don't do this leadership work to people. You do it with them. And when you involve them in the process of identifying the goals and the strategies and the behaviors that we have to do to win, that's one of the mechanisms that makes them want to do it. Because whose idea is it? It's everyone's. And if it's the leader's idea, who's the smartest guy in the room and she knows it, then what are the people who are following that person thinking? Oh, that's their thing, right? Sometimes we want to make them fail just to make them look bad because they didn't listen to us. So people need to be heard in the process. We need to have these predictive measures to make sure that the achievement is on a regular basis. I don't want to find out in June that I wasn't ready to go to the beach. I want to be able to see week to week, day to day, I won today. How did I win today? I went to the gym, got my heart rate up into the target zone for 30 minutes. I did resistance training for 20 minutes. I won today. Okay? I want to keep winning every single day. Those are the predictive measures. Scoreboards, something we haven't talked about that we'll talk about next, is a mechanism for winning. Writing down our goals and our commitments. We're not going to talk about that, but I think most of you know a goal not written is only a wish. So if you want to write your goals down, you'll be much more likely to actually get them done. The other thing is tell other people what your commitments are. If you tell somebody you're going to run a marathon, if you tell somebody you're going to get an A in a class, if you tell somebody what your intent is, because most of us have integrity, because most of us don't want to let our friends and peers and family members down, we tend to do a better job of getting after and accomplishing the things we've told other people we're committed to doing. So let people know. Don't hide it. Don't keep it a secret. Let people know what your intent is. Next thing you want to do is have a regular, what we call a rhythm of accountability. It's a regular time where you sit down and account to each other about whether or not you're doing the things that are necessary to win. So, James Ball in his book DNA Leadership said the primary stimulus for your actions is the mental tension you create in your mind when you become aware of the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Scoreboards is what lets you know that there's a gap. It creates that mental tension. You don't feel comfortable because what happens is if there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be, it tells you you're a loser. Now, how many in this room are losers? He's just kidding. He's not really. He feels like one now, but for the most part, I think all of you said we're winners, and I believe that. I think every human being is a winner. I think they have the capacity to win. I believe they want to win. They just don't have the mechanisms and the understanding to do it consistently. And so when you have a scoreboard that tells you you're a loser and you're a winner, that's a disconnect. It doesn't feel good. But I asked you guys earlier if you're winners, and I asked you, how did you know? There were lots of different responses, and I'm not sure any of them were accurate, right? Because I'd like some of you to prove that you're winning. Based on what objectives? How do you know? Right? So he says, once you become aware of this gap, you subconsciously and consciously begin to find ways to bridge it. So that's why we need the scoreboard, so we can become aware of the gap, and then subconsciously and consciously we start to close the gap. But we have to know what the gap is. So some rules for scoreboarding. Frankly, we want to do scoreboards in our lives and at work in particular like we do them in an athletic contest. Okay? Now, work with me on this one. How many of you have a job right now? How many of you, when you go to work, can tell at the end of a day or at the end of the week whether or not you were winning? Okay, a couple of you. Most of you are just working, right? It's like you're a football player and you're out running plays, you're running around in the field, but there's no scoreboard to look at, right? If we did scoreboarding in a football game like we do it at work, think about that. If we did scoreboarding in a football game like you do it at your work, who would know the score? Do your bosses and managers and owners know the score? Do they know how the finances are doing in the organization? Do they know if they're making money? Do they have some indication of whether they're successful? Yeah. So imagine with me, the football team, coach has handheld scoreboard, right? We'd let the coaches know. Heaven forbid the players actually know the score, right? Coach has a scoreboard. The owners up in the box have a score. That makes sense, right? That's how it would be at work. Player comes to the coach and says, "Hey, coach, what's the score?" And the coach says, "Buddy, you just go play the game. I'll let you know on a need-to-know basis when I find out." And if we did it at work, like, or in a football game like we do it at work, when would the coaches find out the score? Like the end of the game, right? It wouldn't be right at the end of the game. It'd be like 7 minutes after the game because accounting's messing with the numbers, right? We'd never do that to athletes in a football game. But that's what happens at work when we don't let people know what the score is, when we don't do scoreboarding like we do it in athletic contests. So that's a secret that you got to deploy when you're running a team, or you're running a business, or you're involved in this organization, is let everybody know what the score is, right? Is this a good scoreboard? Is that motivating? Can you tell who's winning or losing? No. That's a typical scoreboard for most organizations, an Excel spreadsheet. Doesn't have a lot of meaning, okay? This is a scoreboard for one of my friends, Scott Miller, a good friend of mine, and I went to him and said, "Scott, your scoreboards suck." And he said, "Listen, Andy, I'm running a business here, and if the people that I lead can't get the information they need out of an Excel spreadsheet, they can go work somewhere else." Interesting attitude. But that's how he felt. He didn't think scoreboards mattered. He didn't think that people needed to know the score. Finally convinced him to do some things different. We built a different scoreboard. Now that's about the same data. Can you tell if that person's winning? Pretty quick. You can see the trends there. You can see where they're at. I can get comparative data by looking at some of the links there. When Scott started using scoreboards like this, what he found is that he started leading his company in every key metric but one. He was so successful for the next 3 years that he was promoted in the company. He swears by scoreboards. He gets it. They work. Okay? Do they just work in business? No, they work everywhere. This is the most successful fundraising organization in the world, nonprofit organization. That's their scoreboard. Does it work? Yeah, it's not great, but it's good. This is a scoreboard for one of my buddies who lives up in Canada. He was weighing 280 pounds. He's 5'7". That's a big man. Is that healthy? No. It's really tough for a Canadian, too, because he couldn't play hockey. Right? Any of you from Canada? That's a big deal when you can't play hockey and you're a guy. And so this is his scoreboard. And his goal was from 280 pounds to 199 pounds by Jordan's grad, or I'll be sad. Jordan was his senior in high school. He had some predictive measures that he thought would help him be successful. One is a daily walk of 5 miles, so I'll fit in the latest styles. The next one was no eating after 8 to ensure I won't gain any weight. And then 2,500 calories a day and watch the pounds fade away. And they tracked it. Every 2 weeks he got on the scale. Every week he tracked whether or not he achieved his predictive measure. And he was able to achieve his goal. Here's a scoreboard for one of my buddies down in Arizona, his son Colin. Colin at the time was 2.5 years old. Colin wouldn't sleep through the night. They put him to bed at 8 and Colin would wake up and he was hungry. He was cold. He was sick. He was scared. There were monsters under his bed. Forgot to brush his teeth. Had to go to the bathroom. So they battled all the time, and I told my friend about this, and he went home and he said to his wife, "I know how to fix Colin, honey. We're going to scoreboard him." His wife said, "This is a 2.5-year-old kid, right? This isn't a business, Brandon. We're not going to scoreboard our kid." And he said, "Trust me, Cindrich does it with his kids, and it's working really well." So they tried it. Now, Colin didn't read at the time. Colin, 2.5, but he could see the pictures. At 8 o'clock, they would say, "Colin, time to go to bed." He would go to his dresser, get his little scorecard, and he would do each of the things on there, and then he would go to bed. If he slept all the way through the night, what did he get when he got up in the morning? He got a sticker. What's a sticker to an 18-month or a 2.5-year-old? Dude, that's gold. It's gold. And if you got 7 stickers, he got a quarter to put in what? The piggy bank. And get cooler than that when you're 2.5 years old. It fixed Colin. Immediately done. Slept through the night, right? Now, Colin is in kindergarten now. He's 1st grade. When he was 4.5, his dad told him that I was showing this all over the world. So Colin, at about 4.5, told his dad, well, tell that consultant guy to tell people why I didn't get a sticker on Tuesday. Right? Because he fell asleep watching TV and his parents didn't wake him up. Now there's a kid that's 4 years old and he doesn't want people he doesn't know to think he's a loser. Right? That is the power of scoreboards. They work for everything. Okay? Next thing we got to do is we got to have a huddle. The huddle is very simple. It is just like a huddle in a football game. You start out by reviewing the assignments from the last play. We just ran a play. Now we got to come back and talk about how did it go. If the play went well, what do? High fives, congratulating, nice catch, good block, good throw, nice run, slaps on the butt, whatever. Okay, don't do that at work because the HR departments hate that. Okay, don't do that part. But there's some celebration. If it didn't go well, do people talk about it in the huddle? Oh yeah, they're going to talk about, I just was down and out while you're running a post. Why don't you pick up the blitzing linebacker, right? That's the kind of stuff. I'm wide open. Why didn't you hit me? They're going to talk about that stuff in the huddle. That's what you got to do when you have your accountability. Your huddle at work for your team, your organization. You got to have a huddle. Might be your huddle with your roommates, whoever your accountability partner is. How many of you do work out? You go to the gym, you have somebody that you go with. If you do that, that's pretty important because if you don't have somebody waiting for you and it's really, really cold when you wake up and it's snowing and you're tired and you're sore, what happens? You start to sleep in, right? The resistance kicks in. One of the things you need is people in an accountability situation to help you get past that resistance. Next thing you do is you look at the scoreboard in a huddle. Will you call a different play based on what you see on the scoreboard? You will. And you should in a football game as well as at work. And you should in life. If you're tracking something that's really important, let's say that you're trying to get a 4.0 GPA so you can keep your scholarship, would it be easy to figure out what the predictive measures are? Some of you are thinking, tell me what they are, man, because I can't figure it out. Something about where you study and how often you study and who you study with and kind of how you prepare for assessments. I mean, there's going to be some things like that that are predictive of success, right? Well, you probably ought to be tracking whether or not you're doing those things. And if you're finding you don't have enough time to do it, you might need to reassess. And you might need to call a different play. You might need to have a different approach to getting it done going forward. Next thing you do in the huddle is you call the next play. And the play is based on what you saw on the scoreboard. You leave with everybody on the team, everybody in the organization knowing what they have to do the next week to run the play. And doesn't everybody on a football team, how many of you hate football and you're just going, what is he talking about? I'm sorry. It's so easy to teach this stuff with sports, and I totally get it. I was actually with a bunch of people a couple years ago, and I taught about football, and I got these evaluations at the end, and they just slammed me. Like, it was all ladies in the group, like 60% of them, and they were like, I don't even know what a linebacker is. What is your idea of culture, Monday Night Football? And I'm thinking, yeah, that's pretty much it. But I felt bad. So I went home and I did this whole thing, like everything that I teach, I did it, to symphonies. Like, I talked about movements and conductors and, all just really tied it into music. And then I was doing this next group and I'm teaching it and I'm just going along and looking, there's like all these, like people are whispering, like, what is he talking about? Just totally. And I knew him, and so I stopped and I said, guys, like 2 weeks ago I got totally beat up by these ladies because I was teaching about football and they hated football. And this lady over here, she reaches into her big bag and she pulls out a cheese head and she puts it on her head. She says, honey child, she says, you in Green Bay right now. You can talk about football all you want. It's like, oh man. So, I'm sorry if you don't like football, but it's so easy to teach this stuff in terms of football. And so accountability is really just a simple huddle, okay? Now, the next part is around follow-through. Bossidy, who helped write the book Execution with Ram Charan, he basically said that follow-through is the cornerstone of execution. If you're going to be a good leader, and you want to be good at winning, and you want to get her done, you gotta follow through. You gotta do it religiously. If you let stuff fall through the cracks, if you do it sometimes but not always, if you're inconsistent, what you're going to find is that your results are inconsistent. And if you're inconsistent in the results, you're not going to win. And so follow through is critical in any leadership role if you want to get her done. So next thing you got to do is you got to complete your assignments. You got to be really proactive. You got to run the play. And I'm going to ask you a simple question. When you get up and start your week, is the week happening to you, or are you happening to the week? Because most of the time what happens is we show up to school on Monday and crap just starts happening. It just falls out of the sky. We don't know what's going to come, and it's urgent, and we just go address it. We just go after it. And we lose our focus and our plans just like that, right? We need to be proactive. Let me show you, sometimes the best way to learn is by looking at non-examples. And I think this is a really good example of the opposite of being proactive.
Oh, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
No, that's good.
And you guys might have seen that. It's actually titled Government Workers. So, kind of interesting. There's a funny little cartoon that talks a little bit about it. No matter how busy I am, I'm never too busy to stop and complain about how busy I am. Right? We're always going to be busy. We got to run the play anyway. We got to do those high-value things anyway. A couple things to finish off with, a couple quotes to think about. This is from Kiev. Successful life does not result from chance, nor is it determined by fate or good fortune, but rather through a succession of successful days. That's why you need to think about the predictive measures. What do I have to do today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day to make sure that I win? It's being a winner every day is what allows us to have a winning semester. Having a winning semester is what allows us to have a winning year. Having a winning year is what allows us to stay on scholarship and to graduate with honors and to get a good job and to make, it's all breaking that down into little pieces and winning every single day. Next piece, Emerson, he said, great majority of men are bundles of beginnings. We're really good at planning. A whole bunch of us are really good at New Year's resolutions, right? Sit down January 1st, you're watching bowl games, you're kicking it. Nice, easy to think about all the cool stuff you want to do, and we're really good at that. But a lot of those good ideas go out the window as soon as things get tough. Finally, critical ingredient is getting off your butt and doing something. It's as simple as that. A lot of people have ideas, but there are few decide to do something about them now. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. Hopefully you've gotten a couple of ideas in the last hour that you can do something about today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you. Thanks.
I just want to thank Andy for that awesome
speech. So this is for you.
Oh, cool.
It's speeches throughout time that have changed the world. So
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thanks.